Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this interview. Please visit again for more content on this website. Today, we have Dr. Arthur Clark with us today. Hi, Mr. Clark.
Hello, Di. Nice to see you.
Hi, nice to see you too. So, how are you today?
It's a very interesting question, but the short answer, of course, is I'm fine. Yeah.
That's wonderful to hear. All right, so would you like to introduce yourself before we begin? Because I see how you have a very long bio here, very impressive as well. So maybe share a little bit about you and to the audience, maybe.
Yeah, I should emphasize that as you get older, or at least in my case, as I get older, the lives of everyone that I meet become more and more interesting. As you get older, you have more and more experience. And so when you hear the story, let's say that I hear the story of Dai, for example, and I just was minutes ago, I was out walking and I met somebody named Peter who had worked as a fireman. He told me a little bit about his life. I was asking him questions because I'm just fascinated with the journeys of people's lives. And this is one of the things I think that happens, at least for me, as I get older, more and more and more interested in learning about the people that I meet, the journeys of their lives.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. I'm really excited to share this time with you. Thank you again for coming on to this interview and for your time. Um, Now, I think I'd like to begin with this interview. It's very exciting. So, to begin off with, I'd like to ask you some questions about just you. And so, could you tell us where you were born?
I was born in Wilmington, North Carolina. Wilmington is a city that's near the Atlantic Ocean. As you know, North Carolina is in the southern American states. It's famous, it's well known for many reasons, but basketball is one of them. And Michael Jordan, I don't know if you've heard the name of Michael Jordan as a basketball player, but he too was born in Wilmington, North Carolina. And
Wow.
there's actually a Michael Jordan Highway in North Carolina. So the UNC team that he played for, the Duke University team, they are typically nationally ranked.
Cool.
And so Wilmington, North Carolina, near the Atlantic Ocean, that's where I was born.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, so as a child, did you like to play basketball or like what was your favorite thing to do as a kid?
I
Yeah.
probably started playing basketball about the age of, I would say, probably about the age of 12.
Hmm.
And I did not, Michael Jordan was cut from his junior high school basketball team, by the way. And I didn't
Yeah.
make my junior high school basketball team, but I did make my high school basketball team. And then my performance steadily improved from there. So I think the one sport that I really took seriously, thousands of hours on the basketball court, yes.
Mm. Wow, that's very impressive. Yes, I relate very much with the sports side of, just childhood, right? I mean, I've always done karate as a kid, and yeah, and that's really been something it's a training of the body and the mind, and right. But that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. In this next question, it's kind of sweet actually, but if you could tell us the most unforgettable memory with your parents.
My parents were wonderful. They had their faults, like all people. But my most unforgettable memory is certainly something that each of them said to me. So I'll just tell you this lesson about life.
Mhm.
I can remember almost where I was when my mother said to me, if you have something difficult to do, and even if you really don't want to do it, make a game out of it. So all my life, and this doesn't mean like a complex, complicated game. It just means the kind of thing that I have done to this day. Every day I'm inventing little games. So that there's a scoring system, a feedback system, and I do this every day with all kinds of little things that I'm trying to do. I just,
Oh,
within the past week, I started a new game that involves 10 sticky notes to get done things that I need to get done during the day. And this is, I mean, I attribute this all to my mother's advice.
oh,
And I do remember approximately when and where she said it. My mother's advice: if you have something difficult to do, make a game out of it. From my father, well, many memories from both of my parents, to be sure. From my father, his statement, and he may have said it only once to me, as my mother said only once to me what I just mentioned, but my father said, leave the world a better place because you have passed through.
mm,
So, and I think that his father had said the same thing to him. So the idea is that, leave, I'm here just for a short time on the earth, and I want to have some kind of positive impact. I want the world to be a little bit better because I have been through the world.
right.
And you could even combine the two, make a game out of making the world a better place because you've passed through it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a wonderful message. Wow. I'm going to probably implement that into my own life, to be honest here. But yes, thank you so much for sharing that. Wow, that's really powerful, I think. And making a game out of difficult things too. I mean, so many times I get caught up with like just schoolwork or whatever I'm doing, but sometimes it piles up and procrastinate and everything. But making a game out of it, right? And then knowing that that's there for a purpose, that for you to go through that world and make it a better place, that underlying purpose. Wow, that's truly wise words. Thank you for that. Um, this next question, I'm very interested about because I'm a high schooler, and the question is, when you were a high schooler, what were you dreaming about, and what kind of future job did you want? And is it the same as what you do today?
Sure. Even in junior high school, I had made a point of getting up an hour early so that I could read for an hour before I went to school. So in high school, I had read, quite a few books by doing that. I mean, Tolstoy's War and Peace was
Um,
one of many that I read in that way. And as a result, in high school, my dream was really, to tell you the truth, my dream was to learn a lot of different languages, travel the world, be a writer, and just explore the world. That was really my dream. However, my father, being very practical minded, said you should become a doctor.
right.
So, and I was, honestly, I was torn between these two things right up through, even after I'd been to medical school.
Mhm.
At the end of medical school, I was still thinking, well, okay, I've been to medical school, but maybe I could still just now I've got my MD degree, but maybe I could now travel the world and do the thing that I dreamed of. But eventually I had to give it up and just go into medicine, which turned out to be very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But in high school, I was dreaming of being a reporter, journalist, a writer, and traveling the world and being able to speak multiple languages. And of course,
Yes.
if you grow up in North Carolina, being able to speak multiple languages, that North Carolina is not famous for people being multilingual. So I a bit of languages when I could. That was it. That was my dream in high school. Yeah.
Wow, that's wonderful. Yes, when I read books, like Tolstoy's Anna Karenina, when I read that book, it just took me on a journey, and now I'm like, oh, I have to go to these places that he used to live in. And I don't know, I really resonate with that dream, but I also really take into account about your, you know, history about getting to be a doctor and finding all these experiences there. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And here in this question really kind of relates to your journey to getting a doctorate and that career path. But the question is, during your undergraduate times, what were the most enjoyable moments that you had?
Well, I certainly enjoyed professors, several professors that I had during college at Davidson, North Carolina, Davidson College, and a professor of German, a professor of English literature. Certainly, that was great. My interactions with them. I think that I was very pleased that the coach at Davidson at the time, the basketball coach, Lefty Brazil, invited me to try out for the team. And the reason I was very pleased about that was because Davidson College was nationally ranked as a basketball team. And I had not gone out my first years at Davidson simply because I didn't particularly want to sit on the bench. Wanted to play. Mm-hmm. And there was an intramural team at Davidson College. You could certainly play basketball. But mm-hmm. I said, okay, well, I mean, he's inviting me out. Davidson was ranked in the top 20 teams in the country at the time. So there was at least one All-American on the team, and very good. So I did go out for the team. I did not make the team. So even though it invited me to come out, this was my senior year, I think. I didn't make the team, but actually, you know, one of the things that in answer to the question, I would say that really even much better than my college years was the year following college, when I was trying to decide, am I going to go to medical school? I had already been accepted at Duke University Medical School, or am I going to just say, no, I am going to travel the world. I am going to be a writer. I am going to speak multiple languages. So I decided to take a year off after college. I went to Germany. I walked into a basketball gymnasium, got in touch with a men's and a women's team that became not only, they were delighted to have an American basketball player on the men's team. And the men's and women's team would often practice together. We would go dancing and drinking together after basketball practice. It became this fantastic social and sports life. One year in Marburg, Germany. Marburg is an old university town with a castle at the top of the hill. So it was sort of like just, this is the dream. You know, this is very much like the dream that I had of being, you know, a journalist, a writer, traveling the world, and I'm bringing basketball into it. My basketball steadily improves throughout that time and beyond. And so that wonderful year in Germany, that would maybe be even the best year of my life. So I wanted to get that in response to your question.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wow, so I guess in a way you were able to experience this dream that you had while you were studying to become a doctor.
Yeah, I had, you know, I went back, I did go back and attended medical school, but it wasn't in medical school itself, but as I got into medicine, did my internship year, and then discovered neurology, clinical neuroscience. And I can certainly tell you about why that was so fascinating to me, but it took time, as it does with anything, to really get into it and gradually learn more and more about it until it becomes more and more interesting, and then it catches you at some point as you get deeper and deeper into it. Yeah.
Right. Oh, that's very fascinating, especially because I'm, you know, starting to learn more and more in high school, and, you know, really looking into college and more education ahead. You know, to really hear that, especially from someone like you, it's like empowering for me, because it's inspiring, to know that all the knowledge I'm going to acquire is going to only spark my interest further. Well, thank you so much for that. And we're gonna jump a little bit here. And I want to ask you a little bit about the Vietnam War and your experience there. So the question, it so it goes. During the era of the Vietnam War, you were a captain in the U.S. Army Medical Corps, 1971 to 73. So where were you staying mainly on a U.S. base or overseas base?
A little over half that time,
Mm-hmm.
I was now I was never in South Vietnam or in Vietnam at all during that war, but I was stationed on a U.S. Army base for 13 of the 24 months in South Korea,
Right.
near a little village, Dongdacheon, and the so I had a golden opportunity there, not only to meet, spend some time with two Korean friends who were Korean augmentation to the U.S. Army. They were Korean soldiers who worked with the U.S. Army, and I made
Oh, I see.
a couple of them. And that was great, but I also had time to do some reading and thinking about the Vietnam War. And that was, so in a sense, that time in the U.S. Army was really a time when my thinking made a lot of progress, a great leap forward, if you will, in terms of realizing what I thought about the Vietnam War and about warfare in general. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Could you share some of what you learned about war and the Vietnam War?
Certainly. I think it's pathologic. If every human life has enormous potential, and keep in mind that no president has the capacity, is capable, is competent to understand the potential of even one human life. No president, no prime minister. So if a president makes a decision that leads to the destruction of thousands or millions of human lives, they're doing something, they're working in an area where they are incompetent.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Right. So warfare is pathologic. It's a form of human behavior. Its causes I would describe it in my book on global citizenship. I emphasize this concept. So I'm just going to make a statement and then explain it. The map is not the territory. So that's from Alfred Korzybski, a book that he wrote in the 1930s called Science and Sanity. And what it means is that my way of thinking or your way of thinking, any way of thinking is not the reality that we are thinking about. Even thinking about something very simple like a cup of coffee,
Uh-huh.
we have a concept about what we're seeing. It's a set of perceptions, interpretations, associations, memories, often with emotional overlay. So our minds are perceiving it. The information input is coming in through our sensory systems, our visual system, auditory system, whatever, and then we think about it. Our brains process it and creates a map. And if you're making a map, obviously a map of the city of Calgary is not the city of Calgary. And what you put on the map should serve your purposes. What do you want to represent on your map of the city of Calgary? It depends on what your purpose is. If you want to show where all the restaurants are, the best restaurants, you'd put that on your map and so on. But the map is not the territory, simply means it's a very wise, a very important concept. And it helps you talk with other people so you don't, hopefully you don't get into a big argument about my way is the right way. I mean, I know about this and that. Of course, facts are important as they would be for a map of Calgary. But your way of thinking or my way of thinking is a way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think that this I put this as kind of the first important concept in my book on global citizenship. And part of the reason for that is to allow you to talk with another person whose way of thinking is very different from yours.
Mm-hmm.
And you could make a working assumption that that person's map, he has a different purpose for the map that he's constructing in his, or she is constructing in her mind.
Right.
You didn't get into a big argument and a fight about it.
Mm-hmm.
You can, you know, remind them. I often say, in my way of thinking, and then I express my way of thinking about something. So that was a very important concept to me, and that grew out partly out of my time thinking about the Vietnam War, and then eventually, after many years, it led to the publication of this book, The ABCs of Human Survival, with 5 axioms. The first one I mentioned to you, and then 30 different principles, trying to simplify in a way and make interesting the thinking about things like warfare and conflict. Yeah.
Right. So, do you believe that these differences or the inability to understand like the differences of thinking, the way you understand like the my way and your way, and how there's different maps and purposes? But so, do you think it's the inability to understand that causes warfare?
Not it's the cause of warfare is much more complicated than that.
Right. Yeah.
I think that one of the, just to take one of many causes of warfare, in my view, we live in geographically and politically, we live in a nation-state system, which has been around for a long time. We think of Japan and America. Well, a person might think I'm an American.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they identify as an American. Another person might identify themselves as Japanese. Well, more basically, however, we are human beings.
Right.
I mean, if you put your finger on your wrist, you'll notice that you have a pulse, and I have a pulse as well.
Right.
And we have eyesight, we have all of these different things, but we grow up in a culture that says, oh, you're an American. So I grew up, you know, America the Beautiful, salute the flag, sing Star Spangled Banner, you know, the stories of heroic Americans and so on. Yeah, I mean, this is part of the reason for warfare, is that we identify as separate from each other.
Right.
And so I think that one of the ways of getting past that, and as I say, there are many things, but one of the ways of getting past that, indeed, is to recognize that we are human beings and to build that identity. If I'm talking to Dai, yeah, sure, I'm older. I was born in the United States. Dai was not born in the United States. On and on and on. Yeah, I understand all that. Yep, I got it. You know, but that is, you know, in my map, the big thing is that Dai and I are human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for that. If it's all right, I actually want to dig down a little bit deeper. But you mentioned how presidents are incompetent when they come to creating warfare because they don't have the ability to understand the potential of these individuals, right?
I think they have the ability.
Right.
You know, after all, presidents and prime ministers are human beings too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They have the ability, but they, again, let's say you've just been elected to be president of the United States.
Right.
All right. So it's your first day in office, and you're thinking, well, now I'm going to get rid of warfare. Well, immediately there will be pressure on you to behave in a presidential manner.
Right.
That pressure will be such, coming from all different kinds of directions. I mean, there is one person has written a book suggesting that John Kennedy, for example, the reason that he was assassinated was because he started thinking too much in this direction of my goodness, with Nikita Khrushchev, we almost had a war over Cuba, the Cuban Missile Crisis, October 1962. We almost it brought the world to an end. I'm going to try to get out of this. And there is at least there's a book certainly written about it, that the reason he was assassinated was because he started thinking too much in that direction. So if you are elected to the office of president, it's not that you are incapable of understanding the basic simple concept. Every human life has this potential, this value, and you, Dai, who has just been elected president of the United States, you are not competent to know the value of human life. So your responsibility, you're certainly capable of understanding that you have this responsibility. It's just that the pressures on you as president of the United States would be enormous to behave in a, quote, presidential fashion. Yeah.
Right. Yes. So I understand your point now about the the higher powers, right? Like presidency and their abilities. But I'm really digging deep here. But I wanted to question you about like how individuals can come to understand that potential in each other.
Well, I think you might start, if I go to medical school and I'm just starting, I understand that I don't know much about medicine. It's important to understand that your understanding is always limited. The map is not the territory. What you have in your head about anything as complex as a human being is very limited. I've just met Dai. It would be silly for me to think that I know Dai's potential. I have no idea. So a humility in terms of the potential of Dai, what he can accomplish in his lifetime, you need to cultivate in yourself this awareness of your own lack of understanding, your own limited knowledge, and so on, and just be respectful of, just in basic principle, of the potential in every human life.
Right.
And go from there. So I think that just being aware of that very basic principle is very important.
Thank you for that, for those words. They're so inspiring and powerful. I think I'd like to move on from question number 6. But the next question is about your experience in the U.S. Army, and so if you could tell us what you learned as a life lesson while you were in the U.S. Army.
Well, some of it I've certainly mentioned. I made very good friends. I traveled. I was sponsoring a Korean child from before the time I was in the Army, and with a couple of the Katusa, the Korean soldiers who were friends of mine, we got in touch with the mother of one of the children that I knew about the sponsorship, and we took the mother and the 2 children on a tour of Korea, and I think that was probably an important experience for them in their youth, their childhood. And I think they were both of them were, it was earlier than their high school years that the children were, and of course the mother was much more advanced in years. And so that was a very important experience, part of my formative experience during the Korean years. I learned about the Korean language, which is probably the most scientific language in terms of sound associated with symbol. So a little bit about the Korean language during the time that I was there. But I also learned negative aspects of things. This is, I think, jumping perhaps to another question that you might ask, but a very negative experience that I had during my time on the U.S. Army base. They had a bus that would carry us around to various places. And on one occasion, I noticed an American soldier being very rude to one of the Korean soldiers and telling him to get up out of the seat, that he was going to take his seat. And so I outranked the American soldier. I was a captain. He was an enlisted man. And I talked to him. I went up and said, I'd like to talk with you. And so I talked to him very politely and respectfully. And we got off the bus and we're continuing to talk. I was just saying that it's important to be, kind of the sort of things that I'm saying to you. And he sort of listened. And then at some point he just said to me, turned to me and said, I don't care what you're saying. If I had to do again, I'd do exactly the same thing I did. And he turned around and walked away. So that was a lesson that you can tell people something that is very important, and you can take time to tell it in a way that is easy to understand and makes a lot of sense. And because of the way they are programmed, they will say, I reject that.
Right.
And so I think you have to learn that lesson about human beings as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a tough one to really experience, hey? I see. Do you think there's in any way a step beyond that? You know how that's just like rejection, right? In that sense. So is there a way to reach into that person, or do you think that's just...
Yeah, I think time and patience is one thing. I mean, it would be very difficult on that particular person who I just encountered on a bus and he's gone. But let's say that we're encountering a racist from the American South, and I know that I'm going to be interacting and working with this person for the next several months. Maybe he's a member of the Ku Klux Klan or whatever. And so the idea is you approach, I mean, for my way of thinking, my math is you approach this person with the assumption that your objective is to make him feel better about himself and rise above this debilitating, negative aspect of who he is, and to be patient and not to preach to him.
Right.
But rather, for example, let's say I know that he's a racist and so on, but the idea would be just ask him about tell me about your childhood. Tell me of the kinds of questions that you're asking me. Tell me about your most memorable experience from your, so I'm going to understand that I have a chance to interact with him over time. But ask him questions that he is really interested in responding to.
Right.
And just make those questions, and learning to ask very good questions. That's a domain for creative activity.
Right.
So, you can, there are many questions that you can ask. I mean, you could certainly write down in advance questions that are good questions. Almost anybody would say, oh, wow, that's an interesting question. And they'll do like I'm doing and just go on and on and on. So I think that interacting with people, give it patience, give it time, approach them with respect, even if they're, racist and the bigot or whatever. Don't think of them as racist and bigot. Think of them as a human being.
Right. Wow. Thank you for those wise words. I think it really, really resonates with society today, right? With the Black Lives Matter movement and the movements that are happening all around the world, and that stance on not labeling people as racists and trying to take them down, but rather to understand them as human beings and to give it time and patience with respect. Wow. I'm getting goosebumps.
Well, I should mention one thing from my college experience that is unforgettable. The head of the National Association for Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, I think it was James Farmer at the time. So this is 1965.
Right.
Davidson College at that time, that had that outstanding basketball team that I mentioned, Davidson College was an all-white male class. Yeah, kind of strange today.
Yeah.
There it is. And James Farmer came, spoke to our class, and his advice about racism was as follows. He said, if I have a prejudice, if I have a bias, if I have a prejudice, let's say he used the example of women drivers. Let's say that I have this prejudice that, oh, that's a woman driving a car, you know, she shouldn't be driving a car. But I know that it's a prejudice. It's just that it's stuck there in my head. So if you've grown up in the American South, you might have a bias, a prejudice, you might have some racism that you recognize. He says, just recognize it as a prejudice, step back from it, recognize, oh, there it is. There goes that stupid part of my mind again, that prejudice part of my mind. Step back from it, distance yourself from it. I forget exactly his words, but that was essentially the advice that he gave us. So
Right.
to recognize those aspects of yourself. And, you know, I would add another thing, and I can't remember whether James Farmer suggested this, start creating, doing things that are positive, that move you away from your prejudice. I
Right.
mean, you have to make a point of meeting people in a group that you're prejudiced against. Start projects, interesting projects with them. Get to know about them, you know, that kind of thing. So this was a very an unforgettable memory from my college years at Davidson College. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for those words. Yeah, I really agree with that. That positive movement, right? Because prejudice is all in the mind at the end of the day, and so to be able to take a step back from that, recognize it, and then to move towards positivity against that prejudice, to really get to know cultures and the people. Wow, I really wish that this interview is seen by a lot of people, because so much of this can impact so much. But yes, well, thank you so much for that. And this is to conclude on the Vietnam War part of the interview. But could you tell me what the most unforgettable episode you had during the time when you were the captain at the U.S. Army Medical Corps?
That's I mean, certainly one of them. I mean, in my response to this, I would mention again that same incident on the bus,
Right.
encountering this American soldier, being very polite, talking to him very gently about something that he had just done, and then having him at the end of this turn to me and just say, I'd do the same thing again, and walk away. That was
Yeah.
an important memory. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And in a way, I feel like that really kind of relates back to what you were saying about the map and the purpose, and my way and your way, and the ability to really understand this, I think.
Yeah, you have to be patient with human beings. They don't learn immediately. You know, you have to be patient. You have to be patient.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Okay. Um, so in this next part, we're moving on a little bit a recent history about you, and so I asked you when you came to Calgary.
Sorry, ask that again.
Yeah. Sorry. I just wanted to know when you came to Calgary.
Oh, 1984. That was
1984.
with my wife, Irma Parhad. She had been born in Iraq, in Mosul, Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
And she and I met in our neurology residency in Albany, New York. And then a couple of years later, we wound up on the faculty of medicine at Johns Hopkins University. Then at some point, they were sort of, at Johns Hopkins, they were pushing junior faculty out of the nest. My position was secure. Hers was not so secure. We had to find a place somewhere in presumably North America where we could both find a position. And Calgary happened to be the place. And 1984 was the year that we moved here.
Wow, that's amazing history. And this is kind of a little bit jumping to your medical area. So I want to know about a little bit about your medical research expertise, like why you chose that, and like what exactly is it?
Yeah, and so I was in my internship year. Right after medical school, you do a year where you rotate through various specialties, including there was 1 month of emergency room medicine. And during that month, I had a patient came into the emergency room who had a neurologic problem. And I called for a consultation from the neurologist on call, who happened to be the chief of neurology at Albany Medical Center. And I watched him as he took a history from the patient, then did this meticulous bedside examination to localize where is the lesion. That's typical of neurology. And there's no other specialty where the detailed examination is so intriguing, so important. And so in your examination, you're trying to find out where in the nervous system is this lesion, for example. Your history, very, meticulous in terms of the time course and everything. And then he ordered a couple of tests and wrote down his impression from his consultation in the emergency room. And I was so impressed. It was the closest thing to Sherlock Holmes I had ever seen in medicine. Before that, I was actually planning to go into cardiology. But after that encounter in the emergency room, I said, I think I'll become a neurologist. And so very soon I was enrolled in this individual's neurology program at Albany Medical Center. And I was absolutely delighted with all the experience as learning neurology, getting more and more and more accomplished as a neurologist. And then from there, my inquisitive mind, if that's, everybody has an inquisitive mind, there were a lot of things a lot of cases that we could not solve. So it's sort of like you always have Sherlock Holmes solving the case, but as neurologists, yeah, we could certainly figure out most of them, but there were cases you just couldn't. And so I said, I'm going to go into neuropathology, because in neuropathology, we can answer questions that the neurologist could not answer during the patient's lifetime. For example, if it's autopsy or if it's surgery material that you've received. So the clinical neurosciences just became absolutely fascinating to me. That's kind of how I got into that specialty in medicine. Yeah.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. Yes. And the next question, it's about your first wife, and how you experienced bereavement, and if you could share some memories you had with her.
Yes, Irma was just an incredible human being, a love of life. Like we wound up going to the mountains frequently on the weekends, hiking, skiing, bicycling, and it was largely because of Irma's enthusiasm. Remember, she's born in Mosul, Iraq, but she had such a love of life. And I think that finding out that she had cancer, you can kind of guess how I might have responded. I wish that I could give my life and let her live. That was my response. So just, it's sort of like Irma was so alive, so in love with life and everything about it, that it's sort of like I've never seen anyone who was so much that way. And and it was sort of like, when we found out that she had cancer, it was already metastasized. She was only going to be, have maybe a year to live. And it was sort of like, if I could just give my life and let her live, that's what I would like to do. That's one of the things that I remember from that time. Yeah.
That's very, very heartbreaking. And I'm so sorry for your loss in that sense, but thank you for sharing that very intimate part of your life. I'm sure she was a wonderful person. And to move on, this next question is about your role in the Calgary Center for Global Community. So could you explain a little bit about the what global community means to us as an everyday person?
Yes, certainly. It's very artificial, as I mentioned earlier, to think of ourselves as first as Americans or Japanese or Russians or Chinese or whatever. That's artificial. So that's imposed. I mean,
Right.
it's a artifact of history and culture. I understand that, but we're first of all human beings, and so the idea, the challenge in terms of global community is to recognize that basic fact. So this is my thinking, but it happens to be a fact. And to get cut through this very, very thick, heavy burden of history and culture and get to a situation where at least before we go extinct as a species on Earth, and we will, nothing lasts forever. In the history of the solar system will, I assume, it'll go on for a while, and then the solar system will, and human beings will last for a while as human beings. I'd like it to be a little longer and a little brighter,
Yes.
what I have, what it often seems that it is. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm after. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for that. And I really, so it's basically what you've been really telling us this whole interview, right? Just to really understand that we're all human beings and that respect for each individual. Oh, thank you. Thank you for those words. This also, this next question talks about what you initiated here. It says you've initiated the Humanology Dialogue Cafe and work as a host of its weekly dialogue session.
Oh, well, I first want to make clear that our CEO at the Calgary Center for Global Community, Salima, is the brilliant originator of humanology. So Salima, just again, the fascinating aspect of human lives, I'm just going to use Salima as an example. She walked across Southwest Europe from Switzerland to Spain. Then as a filmmaker, she went to the Middle East, made a series of documentary films about individuals. Then she came back to Calgary. She had lived partly in Australia, partly in Calgary, partly in other parts of the world. She came back to be our CEO at the Calgary Center for Global Community. Very soon she was starting her own ideas. For example, she established Empathy Week here in Calgary, which is now an official part of the City of Calgary calendar. And she invited me because I have this weekly dialogue event every Wednesday night that Shinobu knows about very well. She invited me to do a little segment about the dialogue or bring the dialogue into Empathy Week as one of the events of this, as I say now, officially part of the City of Calgary's calendar. But Empathy Week is one of Salima's many initiatives, as well as the Humanology Gallery and Store near the corner of 7th Street and 17th Avenue Southwest. And so let's think about Selima for just a moment and think about a human life,
Mm-hmm.
the potential of that human life, the brilliance of that human life. I mean, if you
Right.
want to think about Albert Einstein, that's fine, or Helen Keller, if you know Helen Keller, blind and deaf from the early age and so on. And yet things that Helen Keller said are to this day, unforgettable. Alone, we can do so little. Together, we can do so much. So that's Helen Keller. But whatever it is, the point is this potential of human lives. So the humanology, all the programs are Selima's initiative. And the dialogue, yes, that's one of the projects that I do, yes, weekly. And there the concept comes from David Bohm. He was a physicist, but he wrote a book published in the 1990s on dialogue. And the idea is that you get together and you're not trying to promote your way of thinking, your particular map of the world. What you're doing is you're contributing ideas. Bohm, I don't think Bohm uses the concept, but the idea is that you're building your group genius.
Mm-hmm.
So Helen Keller says, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. You might say with Einstein, alone we can imagine so little, combine Helen Keller and Einstein now. Alone we can imagine so little, together we can imagine so much, we can get smarter, we can build our group genius. So that's kind of the idea of dialogue, but it was inspired by David Bohm's book on dialogue published in the 1990s.
Uh-huh.
I hope that I've answered your question.
Well, I loved every little bit about that. Thank you so much. Yeah, I had never thought of it in that way when dialogue and that and then building a group, like making a bigger map almost. Not trying to persuade someone to change their map, but to rather have a bigger view. Like that's such a profound way of thinking that I love to implement that in my everyday life and in my school and in my life, and because it'd be such a profound way of living when if I can take this and then establish this in daily conversation where it's not me trying to persuade or me trying to defend, but rather me trying to build upon the other and try to build my own while talking to someone. Because, wow. Thank you for
if you imagine the antithesis, did you see the Tom Hanks movie Cast Away?
No, I have not.
Well, he just did a movie in which he works for FedEx, and his plane, FedEx plane, goes down in the ocean, and he's 5 years on a desert island by himself.
Oh my goodness.
So that's the movie Cast Away, and that's kind of at the opposite extreme. He cannot interact with other human beings.
Yeah.
So then you might, if you go through that, imagine being cast away on a desert island for 5 years and thinking, oh, if I just had the chance to interact with people, oh, I would love to do that. And you might come up with the idea of let's do dialogue every week. So I just to be clear, I was not cast away on a desert in the Pacific for 5 years, but the weekly dialogues are kind of one of the things I might have dreamed about doing if I could just get back and interact with human beings. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. All right. This is well. Thank you for sharing all about that. I really appreciate every little thing that you add to this interview. It's just purely genius and wonderful and fabulous. We're getting quite close to the end of this interview, and this one's a pretty big question, so I'm just gonna read it off because I don't want to confuse you. But so here's the question. You have been very active selflessly to develop causes for human rights, social justice, nuclear weapon abolishment, and building a healthy global community. You're also a founding father of our Floating Lantern Peace Ceremony, and you have been continuously supporting our activities since the beginning of this event. Could you share the philosophy you have in your heart, which motivates you to keep working for these activities?
Sure. I want each day of my life to be satisfying to me. It's sort of like, okay, as the day unfolds, I feel like this is very interesting and engaging, and this is a wonderful day. I want it to be every day to be satisfying. I want it to be satisfactory. If I look back on it, did I use that day well? And I want it to be. I want my life to be my life, not just every day, but that's what a life is made of. I want my life to be satisfying, satisfactory, and honorable. And in terms of approaching each day, because that's the unit of time that we generally think in, one way to make that whole experience satisfying, satisfactory, and honorable is to have a vision, a purpose in life. So one author that I've looked at briefly has argued, instead of looking for happiness, look for purpose. Find a purpose in your life.
I see.
Rather than looking for happiness. The happiness will follow, but look for a purpose. And so I think of things in somewhat this way as my philosophy. Each day is a gift. So here's the gift of the day. But I have a responsibility with this gift. And it's only going to be here for 24 hours and then it's gone forever. I have a responsibility with this gift to make a gift to the world and to others in return for this gift that I've been given. And of course, as you get older, you realize more and more how valuable each day is, obviously. And so, okay, here's the gift, yes, but it's not to fritter away and waste and so on. It's you have to use this gift to make your gift to the world. That's your responsibility. So that's kind of my philosophy, along with what I mentioned earlier, knowing the potential value of each life, knowing how our culture has steered us in this direction of violence and warfare, knowing that it's going to take time to change this, if we can change it at all. I don't know whether we can change it at all, but the idea is with each day of my life, I want to work to what my father had said, leave the world a little bit better place because I have passed through it. And so this is kind of my marching instructions for each day. And the idea is that it should not just be, oh, I have to get up and make the world a better place. No. I mean, it's supposed to be, if you do it in the right way, the happiness follows the purpose, you see.
Right.
And so, and imagination, Einstein's imagination is more important than knowledge. Creativity is tremendously important for all kinds of things, including your own mental health. So you look at any given situation, you imagine what you could do with that situation. You look at a person, you're just like about an hour and a half ago, I was talking with Peter, and here's a chance to talk with Peter. I probably will never talk with him again, just passed him on the street during my walk for exercise. And I asked him about a little bit about what his past was. He had been a fireman. All kinds of interesting things began to emerge. And we had a kind of a joyful experience for about 10 minutes.
Right.
And that is a part of my day that I've been given this day as a gift. And I do journaling and keep notes of all these interesting things. Like I talked with Dai today, and he asked me all these interesting questions, whatever. If you can, out of your life, if you can make a Leo Tolstoy novel, Anna Karenina, preferably not ending it the way Anna Karenina ended her life, of course, but if you can make a really interesting novel out of your life just by the way you live every day, that's a good thing. And my particular structure is I would really like to get rid of warfare, just end it. And if it doesn't happen, okay, but at least I tried, and that's fine. That's the best I can do. So that's good. Yeah. Is that okay for philosophy?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. You really went deep, deep, deep into this topic, and I actually am quite appalled about your mentioning about purpose and to try to find purpose, not happiness. And in a way, actually, I was in an accelerated English program basically, and I had to write an essay about what I believe in. And in this, I was thinking about what I believe in, and then I started questioning about like what I really believed in, like what my meaning was and why I'm here today, and all these thoughts, right? Very philosophical in that sense. And at the end of the day, what I wrote about purpose and how when I have a purpose, then I am granted my meaning because I have this purpose that this to work for to use my gift of 24 hours and to turn it into what I have my purpose for, and I'm just really surprised and I'm so happy that you mentioned this because I feel like a very deep connection in that sense because
I have a question for you, by the way.
yeah.
Have you ever paid any attention to Stoic philosophy?
Stoic philosophy?
Yes.
I have not. No, I've not heard of that before. No.
Well, yeah. I mean, the reason I mention it, there's an author, a young man, Ryan Holiday, who has turned his attention very much to the Stoic. So he has a book, a recent publication, The Daily Stoic for each day of the year, Stoic Wisdom. The Emperor Marcus Aurelius was a very well-known Stoic philosopher, along with Epictetus. The names may be familiar, and and others. And the Stoic philosophy, when I was a teenager, I found it very, very helpful to me.
Right.
And I'll just mention from Ryan Holiday 3 mantras. He calls it one of countless things that he does in revisiting, reworking, and presenting Stoic philosophy in his current books. He has 3 mantras. One of them is something called amor fati, love whatever happens. And this may sound strange, but the amor fati, no matter what happens, think of it as something that you need to look at it in such a way, put your mind around it in such a way that you're glad that it happened. If you have you have a difficult encounter in school, a difficult encounter that I had on the bus when I was in South Korea with that American soldier, I should, and it should, I hope that it makes sense that that was absolutely wonderful that I had that encounter, that he gave me that surprise, unpleasant surprise at the time, but now it is like, this was beautiful, that moment. So amor fati, love whatever happens.
Right.
Second mantra is you control how you play the game. You do not control how long you're going to live. You don't control a lot of things about your physical being. You don't control many, many things in the world, but you do control how you play the game. So there are things that you can do. He actually gave a talk to a professional sports team at the invitation of the coach. And he was emphasizing you don't control what the umpire does. If your coach is screaming at you, what the other team does, what your teammates do. But you do control how you play the game. So that's the second mantra. Amor fati, love what happens. You control how you play the game. And the last is Memento Mori. Remember death. Remember that we will all pass away.
Right.
Remember the transience of all things.
Mm-hmm.
So those are three Stoic mantras. Ryan Holiday is the contemporary author who's really paying a lot of attention to Stoic philosophy. And I just thought, since you had asked a question about philosophy, I might mention that as well.
Wow. Thank you for mentioning that. I really appreciate it. So Stoic philosophy, right?
Right.
Wow. I love those three mantras, and they're so in every way. It's like a profound way to view life, and it's mostly just facts of life, though, right? I mean, obviously you control the game, and obviously you're going to die, but when those words, I mean, I don't really think about that all the time, but when they're put into words, it's like an eye opener. It's like, wow, yeah, that's right. You know? Oh,
So
thank you.
one chance.
Yeah, yeah.
This is your chance.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with me. I love to look into this, and really, just I appreciate it so much. And I'm really, really sad that this is the concluding question. I have thoroughly enjoyed this time, and I'm so grateful, and I'm just really exhilarated that this interview actually took place today. And well, I think I should move on to the last question. So it's a big one, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say. But here it is. So I I would like to be a person who can make a change for the betterment of our society, and there must be many people out there that think just like me. And I was wondering if you could give any advice to these young people like me and the others that are out there.
I think recognize the enormous, enormous potential of your life. Just, all of the things that I've said, just, I won't go through all of the different things, but you don't control what the president does every day, but you do control what you do. And you have you have ways of, you have freedoms that the president doesn't have for reasons that I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in the office of president or prime minister, you have all kinds of pressures on you. Like everyone else, you only have 24 hours in the day. Like everyone else, you're going to pass away. And now you're all of a sudden in the office of president or prime minister, and you're being forced to behave in ways that, other people don't have that restriction. So you have, because you're not the president, you're not the prime minister, you have this enormous freedom to make this gift to the world that will be of lasting value. And you can start just a small step. A journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. And then once you start, you just keep going. You do not need to succeed, you just need to persist. Just keep going. Just keep walking. And make that gift to the world that your life and only your life can bring to the world. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. I'm just trying to like really take these words into like my mind and heart. But thank you for those words. They mean so much to me, and I really hope that people see this interview and make it to here, although it's been like an hour, and really get to experience those words, Mr. Clark, because that was just fantastic and fabulous. And yes, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with this step today, and just to recognize potential. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I cannot.
And thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, I'm just so glad that we were able to have this happen today. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for coming up today and sharing your wisdom and your wise words and your heart and soul. I appreciate everything that you really shared with us today, and I will take it all into heart. And this will be on our website. And so it's going to reach a lot of people. So again, I repeat, thank you so much for today. And I think this concludes our interview. I hope you are so very inspired by Dr. Clark as I am today. His words and wisdom, just, it really sank into my heart, and it was a wonderful gift. So I hope you were able to experience this as well. In our Peace Memorial Week, we are going to be uploading many other interviews and events, such as this one. And so please come back on our website at www.calgaryfloatinglanterns.com. And on here, you'll be able to see a peace forum, also joined by Dr. Clark. So you'll be able to experience his greatness in that video as well. And we are also going to have a special, floating lantern live stream event on August 8th. So please come back to our website again. Again, I repeat, www.calgaryfloatinglanterns.com. Thank you for watching this video. Bye-bye.